Hey, what's up, my friends? Welcome back to part 2 of the NBA strategy series. Today, we're going to talk about lineup construction in GPPs, leveraging ownership in tournaments. We're going to discuss lightly on how to start with your cash game builds, and one of the most important topics, I think, always for all sports, all DFS sports. How big should your player pool be? That's a huge one for me, and I generally run them quite small, and I'll talk a little bit about that at the end of the video. And I will highlight how I plan on doing these tiered rankings for the NBA content. And you can find all of this stuff over at teamriseorfall.com, and all sorts of tools for NFL and content. We'll have a similar setup for NBA here in a hot second. If you want, down below in the description section, what I'm going to be referencing today is this NBA Study Hub, and you can go ahead and take a peek at this down below in the description section. Now, let's talk ownership and how to leverage this in tournaments. First thing I will always do is go to the NBA Study Hub. I will sort our DK ownership projections if I'm making a DraftKings lineup, which we'll talk about doing so today. And I'll look at the ownerships, and I'll look for a few things. First off, are there any extremely high-priced players who are going to be chalk? And if so, is there somebody who is a relatively similar floor and ceiling type scorer at a much less ownership at the same price point? I'm a big price point pivot type guy. That means if you have two guys who are around 10K who have a very similar projection, very similar floor and scoring ceiling, and one of them is 5% projected ownership and the other one's 25%, there's my play. It's the 5% guy 90% of the time, barring any type of unforeseen circumstances that might make me jump on the chalk. That's just something I don't try to do in NBA. Now, one thing I want to do also inside of a lineup like that is leverage that ownership. So here's what this would look like. Let's say we're looking at tonight's slate, and this is completely hypothetical. Let's pretend that Luka Doncic is going to be somebody projected for 50% ownership at the point guard spot. Two things. Number one, I have a price point pivot on Morant here at 8.8K, similar price tag. And if Morant is going to be 15% projected ownership, right now, he's the play. But not only that, not only do I want to use Morant over Doncic here, I also want to leverage all of that Doncic ownership. So if the field has 50% ownership on Doncic, you have to ask yourself, if Doncic does not go off, if Luka just doesn't hit that ceiling game, what happened? How did that happen? Was it somebody on his team went bonkers that he just kept feeding him the ball, or that person just kept creating their scoring opportunities? Was Luka playing, was the opposing team playing great defense on him? Was it a blowout? And then how can you capitalize in your lineup based on those scenarios? So it's a little bit of game theory against all of that. Half the field has Luka in this tournament. So I'm going to game theorize that, well, maybe Porzingis just went ham, dominated the paint. Anytime he had the ball outside the three-point line, it was burying his three-point shots. A 20 and 15 type game. And for whatever reason, Luka was just deferring to Kristaps, which we see sometimes there. So two things have just happened. One, I have leveraged all of that Luka Doncic ownership by using one of his teammates, who sometimes when he goes nuclear, Luka does not. And number two, I have also price point pivoted away from Luka and grabbed the next person, Morant, here at 8.8K. So I've effectively, leveraged half the ownership and price point pivoted to a very low-owned player. My lineup, no matter what I do with the rest of it already, incredibly unique. It's a very easy way to start off your lineup, building a unique lineup that won't be duped, or at least has a low probability of being duplicated by anybody else in the field. From here, you literally can just go the most optimal route if you want. This means if you are using Fantasy Cruncher, which all of our members get $20 to use on Fantasy Cruncher, every member, as we're partnered with them. You can use Fantasy Cruncher, lock in these two players, make all your adjustments to your pool, and build your own optimal lineup, or use our suggested, player pool or tiered rankings, whatever you want to use for that night, and then go ahead and build off of that, however you see fit. Okay, so if we are building a lineup from here, the next thing I'm truly just doing is worrying most about scoring ceiling. It's a tournament. I care nothing else about, especially if I'm hand building, I care nothing I care about nothing more than just how many points can these people get me if they have that great game. And when I go up and down these lineups, there's two questions I'm going to ask myself. If I'm comparing two similar players like Drew Holiday and Donovan Mitchell, all right, well, who has a higher scoring ceiling? If the answer is it's the same, and that's probably why they're priced similarly. Okay, well, if they both have 60-point ceilings tonight, who has the higher probability of getting there? That's my only other question. I do not care about matchup. Do not care about ownership. I don't care about literally anything. All that stuff's kind of baked into the projections anyways. And we've got these ratings that kind of are an all-encompassing answer to these things, like ownership, floor and ceiling, which we have these things involved. Fantasy points per minute, ownership, projected minutes, DK points, trends, their heat map, what's going on in the trends. We've got a Sims multiplier over here that we use on our study hub. So this is an all-encompassing grade of those things, and maybe somebody pops in the ratings like John Morant here at 99.09. By the way, this is an old one from October 28th. So this is a study hub sample. Make sure you understand that. And when you weigh this, if one of them shows 78 and the other one's like a 56, I'm going to go with whomever has the higher rating. Boom. Now I have the better, the more optimal route to victory here. I've got the better overall play. Even though outside looking in, the two might be eerily similar, ratings kind of takes an all-encompassing look at all of these guys together. And I'm going to go up and down the rest of my lineup, and I'm going to do that. Now, when you're doing this, the last thing I want you to think about is who is down here in the guard, forward, and utility spot here on DraftKings. You need to make sure that those guys are the latest game times, the latest start times. So, try to get your 7:05 starts in here. Try to get your 8:05 and, 10:15 or whatever the late game is. And if you have 3 late games here, try to get your most expensive one here in the utility spot, or somebody who maybe, is questionable that you're waiting for, and then you want to be able to pivot off of that person with all that money and be able to go get anybody else you want. So keep those in mind. I hope this was helpful. I think it would be helpful for somebody who needs a quick refresher. The last thing I want to do is look at cash games. So if we're building a cash game lineup, multiple ways you can do this. Number one, I am a huge fan of creating your own personal unique player pool. Keep that player pool very small, 15, 20 players. Lock in a couple of your favorite, pretty much like a core, as we give away these building blocks during the NFL season under our NFL content. We'll be doing this for NBA every night too. We'll have, I think, 5 or 6 different coaches doing this. And your goal is basically to plug in like a building block, right? Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams, Robert Tonyan, Gallup, all right? And you plug in 4 players, or if NBA, you plug in like 3 or 4, or whatever it is, and then you build that small player pool of 15 others, and you're in Fantasy Cruncher, you can crunch out your personal optimal lineup. Another way you can do this is just go a stud and dud. You can grab the best value on the slate. You can grab the highest projected player on the slate. You put those two in a lineup, and you start there. You worry about floor and ceiling with those two, and then everybody else, you're worried about your scoring floor with. Now, while you're building that scoring floor, I want you to look at it 2 ways. Number one, what's the probability that they're going to hit this, that they're going to exceed what I am projecting as a floor? Because remember, with our projections, they're just a median projection, and our floor in the sample here is what you need to be paying attention to. So you're building this lineup, you're worried about floor. Now, if you come to, here's the second part, if you come to a decision between 2 players that have a similar floor, go with the player with the higher ceiling. Very simple. So I'm just going to make this up right here. Let's pretend these two are in the same positions. One of them has a 24.18 scoring floor, and the other is 25.19, and they are same price, same everything, right? And then there's one that has a little bit higher ceiling. Go with that person every time, because if you're entering these cash games, if you're entering head-to-heads, 50-50, double-ups, small leagues, 3-5-mans, you still need to have a ceiling to beat 50% of the field. And if you're in head-to-heads, your scoring ceiling still does matter. Now, we've inherently already attacked that a little bit by going with the stud and dud approach with our first 2 picks, grabbing not necessarily a stud and dud, but grabbing the highest projection and grabbing the best value and going from there. There's many different ways to approach these things. I'm sure there are many other analysts, touts, whatever you want to call them out there that have their own strategies, and that's the beauty of all things DFS. There's many different unique ways to approach all of these things, and if there was one industry accepted way, the entire industry would be doing it, and no one would be winning gobs and gobs of money. Or somebody would be doing it, not sharing it, and be retired on an island, not even playing anymore, if there was something that was so foolproof. What I'm trying to give you today is general guidelines. They're not rules saying, my friends, you follow this to the letter, and you're going to win some serious money. That's not true. And I wish I could say it is, but that'd be blowing smoke. I hope this helps you and it gives you a good baseline. The next video we're going to talk about a lot more is going to be player pool size in tournaments, in cash games, and in MME. And then I will go ahead and make a strategy MME video using Fantasy Cruncher, which we're partnered with. Remember, all of our members get $20 to use on them. You can see that on the overlay right there. We also have sports betting at just $4.99 and $9.99 via the Patreon link down below. I hope this video helps you out. Whatever it does for you, I hope that you still have yourself a great season, whether you're with us or with others. Truly just want to see people succeed. We all can do it. We all start somewhere, especially if you're doing budget baller type plays. You know, you're maxing out the dime entry for 10 cents every night, or you're playing a single $5 lineup nightly. There is space for you in this landscape. And if you catch on with us and dive into our coaching Discord, I think we can help you out. Together we rise. Take care, my friends.